I wake up drowning in sweat, the taste of cheap whiskey still thick in my mouth. My hands shake as I fumble for the glass of water on my nightstand. Empty. Of course. I rub my eyes, trying to shake the fog from my head, but the nightmare lingers like a bad hangover. Same damn dream. Same dimly lit bar, the stink of cigarettes and regret in the air. Same sick feeling in my gut as I stare at the bottle in front of me, knowing exactly where the night is going to end. 2 years and I still can't escape it. I push the covers off and sit on the edge of the bed, head in my hands. The apartment is quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, pressing down on me. I look around, papers stacked on my desk, a few empty takeout boxes on the counter, blinds half open to the dark Indianapolis skyline. If you can call it that. The nightmares didn't start right away. For a while, I kept myself busy enough that I didn't have to think about it. Work, cases, late nights tailing unfaithful husbands and crooked businessmen, anything to keep my mind occupied. But eventually, the memories crept in. And when they did, they sank their teeth in deep. 2 years ago, my life was different. I was different. I had Kathy. I had a house. But I don't even know what to call it. Stability? A future? Whatever it was, it shattered fast. It started small. A name that kept coming up in conversation. Jack Hansen. She couldn't stop talking about him. How smart he was. How much the company was changing because of him. How he gave the best advice. I brushed it off at first. A new boss, a little admiration, nothing to be worried about. But then things started shifting. Kathy stopped coming home on time. She was always busy, always at work, always too tired. She started dressing differently, nicer clothes, more makeup, perfume she never wore before. And when I'd ask her about it, she'd get defensive. Said I was imagining things. Said I was being paranoid. That's when I started drinking more. Not all the time. Just enough to take the edge off. A couple of drinks after work turned into a couple of drinks before bed. Then, before I knew it, I was sitting in that bar, staring at a half-empty bottle, feeling like I was coming apart at the seams. And that's where the nightmares always take me. I exhale, forcing myself to my feet. No point trying to sleep now. I walk to the kitchen, the floor cold under my bare feet, and pour myself a glass of water. My reflection stares back at me from the dark window. Tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a man who looks like he's been through hell and back. Maybe I have. I check my phone. 3:17 a.m. A couple of missed calls from a client, nothing urgent. Just another cheating husband looking for proof of what he already knows. I should go back to bed, but I don't. Instead, I grab my coat and head for the door. There's no escaping the past, but maybe if I stay busy enough, I can outrun it for just a little while longer. It was around this time 2 years ago that things really started shifting. At first, it was little things easy to ignore. Kathy was stressed at work. Fine, understandable. The city inspectors were giving us trouble over the new house. Annoying, but not the end of the world. We were both busy. That's just life, right? But then Jack Hansen showed up. I remember the first time I heard his name. Kathy came home late. Again, and as she tossed her bag on the counter, she started talking about some big meeting. Jack had the best idea, she said. Jack really knows how to take charge. I didn't think much of it. Every office has a guy like that. The smooth talker, the one who makes everything sound like his personal mission. But then she kept bringing him up. In little ways. At dinner. Before bed. On weekends when she was catching up on work, but somehow still found time to text him. I made a joke about it once. You talk about this guy like he walks on water. She laughed, but there was something in her eyes I didn't like. Don't be ridiculous, Fred. He's just my boss. Just her boss. I let it go. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. I'd seen too many cases where guys let their suspicions eat them alive, and I wasn't about to be one of them. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being unfair. But then she started changing. It wasn't just working late. It was the way she looked at her phone, the way she turned the screen away when I walked into the room. It was the way she dressed, skirts a little tighter, blouses a little lower. It was the way she started arguing with me over nothing, picking fights that didn't need to happen. I remember one night in particular. I had just gotten home from a long stakeout, nothing exciting. Kathy was already in bed, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," I said, kicking off my shoes. "Long night?" She barely looked up. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. "Everything okay?" She sighed like I was bothering her. "I'm just tired, Fred." Tired? That was her favorite excuse. I nodded, trying not to push it. "Want to talk about it?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she put her phone down and turned to me with this forced smile. "Work's just crazy. The merger is taking up all my time. Jack says." She stopped, realizing she said his name again. I caught it. And for the first time, I let myself admit what I was feeling. That something wasn't right. That maybe I wasn't imagining things. But I didn't say anything. Not that night. Instead, I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling the first real cracks in our foundation. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't press her harder that night. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. Maybe I still thought we could work through whatever was happening. But I should have known better. A week passed, then another. The late nights at the office became the norm. At first, she'd text me if she was staying late. "Big project, don't wait up." Then the messages stopped. I'd call her and she'd let it ring. Later, she'd text something vague like, "Sorry, swamped at work," and that was it. I wasn't stupid. I knew something was off. I just didn't have proof. And in my line of work, proof is everything. One Friday night, I decided to surprise her. I was supposed to be out on a case, but I wrapped up early. Figured I'd grab some takeout from her favorite Thai place and swing by the office. Maybe she really was just working late. Maybe I was overthinking. I pulled into the parking lot around 9:30. The office was dark except for a few lights on the top floor. I knew Kathy's department was up there. My gut twisted as I walked inside. The place was quiet, empty. The kind of empty where you can hear your own footsteps echo. I took the elevator up, carrying the bag of food, rehearsing what I'd say when I saw her. "Hey, thought you could use a break. Brought your favorite." Something normal. Casual. But when I stepped onto her floor, I heard something that made me stop cold. Laughter. Not the casual kind. The kind that's warm, personal, like an inside joke between two people who are just a little too comfortable with each other. I took a few steps forward, careful not to make a sound. And there she was. Sitting at her desk, smiling at her phone. Her shoes were off, her hair was down, and she was leaning back in her chair like she didn't have a care in the world. And standing next to her? Jack Hansen. He was leaning over her desk, one hand resting on the edge, the other pointing at something on her screen. He was close. Too close. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but whatever it was, it made her laugh again. Not just a polite chuckle. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in months. Something in my chest tightened. I wanted to storm in, slam the food on her desk, and ask her what the hell was going on. But I didn't. Instead, I turned around and walked out. I drove home with the food still sitting in the passenger seat, untouched. That night, Kathy came home past midnight. I was sitting on the couch, TV on but muted, just waiting. She barely glanced at me as she walked in. "Long night," she said, kicking off her heels. I kept my voice even. "Yeah? What kept you?" She stretched, not looking at me. "Work stuff. You know how it is." I studied her, waiting to see if she'd mention him. If she'd lie to my face. She yawned. "Gonna shower. I reek of coffee." I watched her disappear down the hall, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She never asked why I was awake. Never asked how my night was. She never even noticed the bag of takeout sitting cold on the kitchen counter. The next morning, I decided to test the waters. I wanted to hear how much of the truth Kathy was willing to tell me. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself coffee, still in her robe. I watched her for a moment, trying to remember the last time we had a normal morning together, when she wasn't rushing off or glued to her phone. "Late night," I said casually, sitting down at the table. She nodded. "Yeah. Work's a mess." I leaned back, keeping my voice neutral. "Anyone stay late with you?" There was a split-second hesitation. A blink too long. A tiny shift in her expression, so small most people wouldn't notice. But I did. No, just me, she said, taking a sip of coffee. But I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I didn't react. Didn't call her out. I just nodded. Tough night, huh? She sighed, rubbing her forehead. You have no idea. Jack's pushing everyone so hard right now. I almost laughed. She had no idea I had been standing in that hallway watching them, listening to her laugh at whatever joke he made. I gripped my coffee mug a little tighter. Yeah, I said. That guy seems involved. Kathy waved a hand. He has to be. The merger's huge. If we pull this off, it'll be a big deal for the company. I tilted my head. And for you? She gave me a look, almost like she was suspicious of why I was asking. I mean, it'll be good for my career. I nodded slowly, watching her. So that's why you've been working so much? Of course. Another sip of coffee. No eye contact. It's just temporary. Things will calm down soon. Temporary. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that moment, the lie, was like a crack in glass. Small, barely noticeable at first. But once it's there, you know it's only a matter of time before everything shatters. And something told me I wasn't going to like what was on the other side after that morning. Something changed in me. Before I had doubts. Suspicions. But hearing Kathy lie to my face flipped a switch. I needed proof. Not because I wanted to be right, but because I couldn't live like this, second-guessing every word, every late night, every glance at her phone. I'd spent years uncovering the truth for other people. Now, it was my own life under the magnifying glass. So, I did what I do best. I started watching. I didn't follow her, not yet. That would be too obvious. Instead, I paid attention to the little things. The way she kept her phone on silent. The way she started carrying her charger everywhere, like she couldn't risk her battery dying. The way she'd smile at a message, then lock her screen the second I walked in the room. And then there were the calls. One night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard her talking in the bedroom. Her voice was low, hushed, but I caught pieces. Yeah, I know. A pause. A quiet laugh. You're ridiculous. I froze. Ridiculous. That same warm tone I'd heard at the office. The same laugh. I turned off the faucet and stepped into the bedroom. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear. The second she saw me, her expression changed. I have to go, she said quickly. She hung up before I could even open my mouth. I leaned against the doorframe. Who was that? She set her phone down. Just work. I kept my face neutral. At 11:30 at night? She sighed, like I was exhausting her. Yes, Fred. Work doesn't stop just because I come home. Who were you talking to? Jesus, why are you grilling me? I didn't blink. Because I know you're lying. That caught her off guard. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, like she was trying to figure out how much I actually knew. But she covered fast. I'm not lying, she said. It was just a last-minute call with the team. Another lie. I could hear it in her voice, see it in the way she fidgeted. But I didn't push. Not yet. Instead, I just nodded. All right. She frowned. All right. I shrugged. If you say so. She held my gaze for a moment, then huffed and grabbed her phone off the bed. I'm too tired for this. She got under the covers, turning her back to me. The conversation was over, at least for her. But for me, it was just getting started. Because now I knew for sure there was something she didn't want me to find. And I was going to find it. After that night, Kathy got more careful. She didn't leave her phone lying around anymore. She kept it face down, took it with her into the bathroom, even started putting it under her pillow when she slept. She thought she was being smart. But I've spent years tracking liars. And they all make the same mistake. They change their patterns. Kathy used to be predictable. She woke up at the same time every morning, left for work at 7:45, came home around 6:30, and spent her evenings watching TV or scrolling on her laptop. That was her routine for years. But now she was always busy. Late meetings, client dinners, work trips that had never been necessary before. And every time I questioned her, she made me feel like I was being unreasonable. I don't get why you're so paranoid. Do you want me to lose my job? You're making something out of nothing. She played the victim perfectly. And I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I was just stressed, letting my work bleed into our marriage. I'd spent years catching people in affairs. Was I just imagining one in my own life? Then one night I found my answer. The business trip. Kathy told me on a Wednesday that she had to leave town for a last-minute conference. Said the whole team was going, including Jack. That was the first red flag. Kathy hated work trips. Always complained about them. But now, suddenly she was fine with it? Excited even? I played along. Asked her where she was going. She told me Chicago. Second red flag. I've done cases in Chicago. The big corporate hotels are easy to check. So after she left Friday morning, I made a call. Pretended to be from her company's accounting department and asked to confirm the reservation for Kathy Alinas. Nothing. No booking under her name. Then I asked about Jack Hansen. Still nothing. I hung up, my stomach twisting. If she wasn't in Chicago, where the hell was she? I had two choices. I could wait for her to come back and see if she lied to my face again. Or I could get in my car and find out for myself. I grabbed my keys. I didn't have to go far. I checked her location history, something she didn't even realize was enabled on her laptop. She wasn't in Chicago. She was at the Willow Grove Inn. A hotel, but not for business. It was one of those quiet, out-of-the-way places. The kind couples go to when they don't want to be seen. I sat in my car outside the hotel for a long time, watching the entrance, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Some part of me still wanted to believe there was another explanation. Then, around 8 p.m., I saw her. Walking out the front doors, dressed up, hair done, smiling. And right beside her, Jack Hansen. Laughing. Joking. His hand on the small of her back like it belonged there. Like she belonged to him. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind went blank. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, walk in there and call her out? Follow them? Then I realized something. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't some drunken mistake. She'd planned this. Lied to my face, packed a bag, and left town with him. And just like that, whatever part of me had been holding on to hope, it snapped. Kathy had made her choice. Now, it was my turn that I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, watching them. Watching her. She looked happy. Relaxed. Not like someone sneaking around, worried about getting caught. Not like a woman who just lied to her husband about a business trip. Jack opened the passenger door of his car for her. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then they drove off. I could have followed them. I could have confronted them right there in the parking lot. I had every reason to. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, watching their taillights disappear, feeling something inside me sink. I'd spent so much time second-guessing myself, doubting, looking for proof. And now that I had it, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a funeral that I don't remember the drive back. 1 minute, I was outside that hotel. The next, I was pulling into my driveway, sitting in my car like a man who just woke up in the wrong life. The house was dark, cold. It felt different now, like it wasn't ours anymore. Just a place where I'd been played for a fool. I walked inside, threw my keys on the counter, and poured myself a drink. Then another. Then another. It wasn't until the third whiskey that I realized my hands were shaking. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. With relief. Because now I knew. No more doubts. No more what-ifs. Kathy was cheating on me. And that meant I could finally stop pretending. She came home Sunday night. I was on the couch, an empty glass on the table beside me. The second she walked in, I knew she had her story prepared. She put her bag down, stretched like she was exhausted, and gave me a tired smile. God, that was a nightmare. I'm so glad to be home. I just stared at her. She walked over and kissed my cheek, kissed me, before flopping onto the couch beside me. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. You okay? She asked, kicking off her heels. I forced my voice to stay calm. Yeah. Just tired. She exhaled. Same. I swear, next time they send me on one of these, I'm quitting. She had no idea. No idea that I'd watched her. That I'd seen her with him. And that was the moment I realized something. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. She thought she was in control. She thought she was fooling me. So I was going to let her think that. For now that night, I lay next to Kathy in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. She was already asleep, like she had nothing to hide. Like she hadn't just spent a weekend wrapped up with Jack Hansen in some hotel, lying to my face. I could have woken her up. Could have told her everything I knew. Could have ripped the covers off and demanded the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I let her sleep. Because now I had the upper hand. For weeks, she had been lying to me, treating me like I was clueless. Now, I was going to do the same to her. I was going to play dumb. Let her dig her own grave. Let her think she was winning. And when the time was right, I was going to burn everything down the next morning. Kathy acted normal. Maybe a little sweeter than usual, like she was overcompensating. She made coffee, kissed me on the cheek before heading to work, even sent me a text in the afternoon. Hope your day's going well. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time before locking my phone. She was trying to keep up appearances. Trying to ease her guilt. But I wasn't the same man I was a week ago. I started paying even closer attention. She was careful but not careful enough. I noticed how she started putting her phone on airplane mode when she was home, probably so no messages would pop up while I was around. I noticed how she got dressed up even on days she had no meetings. I noticed how she would mention Jack less and less, as if ignoring his existence would make me stop thinking about him. And when she was working late, I started checking the hotel. Friday night. Saturday night. Wednesday afternoon. Different days, same car parked outside Willow Grove Inn. She wasn't even trying to switch locations. She was that comfortable. That confident she wouldn't get caught. That's what made it worse. Not just the cheating. Not just the lying. The fact that she thought so little of me that she didn't even bother to cover her tracks, that I could have confronted her right then and there. Could have thrown the evidence in her face and watched her squirm. But no. I wanted more. I wanted to see how far she would go. How deep she would dig herself. So I started planning. Step 1. Get undeniable proof. Photos. Screenshots. Something that she couldn't talk her way out of. Step 2. Find out who else knew. Because Kathy wasn't doing this in a vacuum. Someone, her coworkers, her friends, someone had to know. Step 3. Wait for the perfect moment. Because Kathy thought she was in control. But she had no idea she was already losing. The worst part of all this? I had to keep pretending. Pretending that everything was fine. That I wasn't watching her every move. That I wasn't tracking her location every time she had a late night at the office. But the more I watched, the more reckless she got. She didn't just meet Jack at the hotel anymore. Sometimes, it was a quiet bar across town. Sometimes, a little cafe tucked away from downtown. She never mentioned these places to me, never brought them up in conversation. But I knew. And every time she thought she was sneaking around, I was one step ahead. It was a Wednesday night when I got my first real piece of evidence. Kathy had told me she was swamped at work. Another long night. She even texted me an hour before, saying, "Don't wait up, I'll be late." I already knew where she was. I'd placed a tracker under her car days ago. A simple GPS tag, easy to miss unless you knew exactly where to look. And it showed me exactly where she had gone. Not the office. Not even the hotel. But Jack's apartment. I parked a block away, watching from a distance, my heart pounding in my ears. Her car was there, sitting in his driveway like she belonged there. She didn't leave for hours. When she finally did, it was close to midnight. She walked out with Jack beside her, laughing at something he said. He leaned in, kissed her like it was the most normal thing in the world, and she kissed him right back. No hesitation. No guilt. Just comfort. Like they had done this 100 times before. I gripped my steering wheel so hard I thought it would snap. That was all I needed. I lifted my camera, snapped a few pictures, and drove home. I didn't need to follow her. Didn't need to ask questions. Because now, I knew everything. The next day, I got my second confirmation, this time, from someone else. I went to her office building around lunchtime. Not to see Kathy, but to talk to someone who might really know what was going on. Her coworker, Megan. Megan was one of Kathy's work friends, but not a close one. Just close enough that she knew the office gossip. And from what I could tell, she didn't particularly like Jack Hansen. I found her grabbing coffee outside the office and approached her casually. "Hey, Megan," I said. "Got a second?" She looked surprised to see me. "Fred? Sure. What's up?" I hesitated, like I was debating saying something. Then I sighed. "I don't want to sound crazy, but is there something going on between Kathy and Jack?" Her face said everything before she even spoke. A flicker of panic. Then a forced smile. "Why would you think that?" "I don't know. Just a gut feeling." Megan glanced around, as if checking to make sure no one else could hear us. Then she lowered her voice. "They're close," she said carefully. "A little too close if you ask me." I raised an eyebrow. "How close?" She hesitated again. Then sighed. "Look, I don't know anything for sure, but they disappear together a lot. Long lunch meetings, late nights in his office. And Kathy's different lately. Like, I don't know, lighter? Lighter. Like a woman who wasn't carrying the weight of a real marriage anymore." Megan gave me a sympathetic look. I didn't want to assume, but yeah. "If you're asking, then maybe you already know." I nodded, forcing a small smile. "Thanks, Megan. That's all I needed." She looked like she wanted to say more but didn't. And that was fine. Because between the pictures, the GPS tracker, and now Megan's reaction, I had everything I needed. I had everything. Pictures, GPS data, even a second-hand confirmation from Megan. Kathy wasn't just cheating. She was comfortable. Settled. Like she had already made her decision, and I was just the fool playing catch-up. But here's the thing. She had no idea I was watching. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still sent those fake hope your day's good texts. Still came home some nights and curled up next to me on the couch, like we were fine. It made me sick. The more I kept my mouth shut, the angrier I got. And I knew, if I wasn't careful, I'd blow everything too soon. So I needed a plan. A real one. I wasn't going to just confront Kathy. I was going to humiliate her. I thought about my options. A quiet conversation? A fight in our living room? Too small. Too easy for her to lie her way out. I needed an audience. And then it hit me. Our anniversary was in 2 weeks. She had already been talking about plans. "Maybe we should do something special," she had said, smiling over dinner, like she wasn't sleeping with her boss. "It's been a rough few months." A rough few months. I had to stop myself from laughing. But I played along. Told her I'd handle the planning. And she was thrilled. Of course she was, because it meant she didn't have to put in any effort. So I set everything up. A dinner reservation. Invitations. Even a little slideshow. A night to remember. For everyone. I needed one last confirmation before I pulled the trigger. One last move to make sure I had everything lined up. So I went back to the hotel. It was a Saturday, and Kathy had told me she'd be working late. I already knew she wouldn't be at the office. I parked outside Willow Grove Inn and waited. Sure enough, her car pulled in around 7:45 p.m. I didn't need to follow her inside. I already knew what was happening. But I wanted proof. Real proof. So I waited. At 10:30, I watched as Jack Hansen walked into the hotel. Not discreetly. Not rushed. Just casual. Comfortable. Like he belonged there. Like she belonged to him. I took a deep breath. Grabbed my camera. Snapped the final few pictures I needed. Then I drove home, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. Because now the game was set. And in 2 weeks, I was going to end it. The hardest part was waiting. For 2 weeks, I had to wake up next to Kathy. Eat dinner with her. Pretend like I wasn't counting down the days until I destroyed her entire world. And she? She was completely oblivious. She smiled at me more. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe because she thought she had me wrapped around her finger. One night, she even reached for my hand while we were watching TV. I let her. Not because I wanted to, but because I wanted her to think she was still in control. She had no idea she was standing on a cliff's edge. Kathy thought it would just be a simple dinner. Just us. Some wine, some small talk, maybe even a little nostalgia about better times. But I had something much bigger planned. I invited friends. Her parents. A few of my family members. I even made sure to extend an invite to a couple of her work friends, including Megan. Kathy thought it was sweet. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you. This is going to be so special." I almost laughed that I made sure everything was perfect. A private dining room at a nice restaurant. A projector for the slideshow. I even had a speech planned. Kathy spent extra time getting ready, humming to herself in the bathroom. I watched her curl her hair, put on lipstick, smile at her reflection. She had no idea that by the end of the night, she'd be wiping mascara-streaked tears off her face. As we got in the car, she reached for my hand again. "I'm really glad we're doing this," she said softly. I smiled. "Me too." She had no idea when we arrived, Kathy was glowing. She hugged her parents, laughed with her friends, played the perfect devoted wife in front of everyone. I poured wine, made conversation, acted like a man who was deeply in love with his wife. And then, when the time was right, I stood up. I tapped my glass, and the room quieted down. Kathy looked up at me, smiling, expecting some sweet speech about our marriage. I took a deep breath and started. "This past year has been full of ups and downs," I said, glancing at her. "Marriage is never easy. But through everything I've learned one thing. Kathy is full of surprises." She smiled, tilting her head. "Fred?" I held up a hand. No, let me finish." Then I picked up the remote, clicked a button, and the projector came to life. The first photo appeared on the screen. Kathy and Jeff standing too close. The second photo. Kathy's car parked outside Jack's apartment. The third. Them kissing in front of Willow Grove Inn. The room was dead silent. Kathy's face drained of all color. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I turned to her parents. "I know you've always thought highly of Kathy," I said, my voice steady. "And I thought you deserved to know the truth. Your daughter has been cheating on me." Guess. Whispers. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Kathy shot up from her chair. "Fred, stop." I clicked again. Another picture. Then another. Then the screenshot of the GPS records. The timestamps. The undeniable proof. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Fred, please, I didn't let her finish. I trusted you," I said, my voice calm. "I gave you every opportunity to tell me the truth. And you lied. Over and over again." She turned to her parents, desperate. "Mom, Dad." Her father stood up. Didn't say a word. Just looked at her. And the disappointment in his eyes said everything. I grabbed my jacket, turned to the stunned crowd, and said, "Enjoy the rest of your evening." Then I walked out, leaving Kathy to drown in the mess she made. She had spent months sneaking around, thinking she was untouchable. Now, she had to deal with the consequences. And I had never felt so free that I didn't look back when I walked out of that restaurant. Didn't care about the whispers, the gasps, the way Kathy's world came crashing down behind me. I stepped outside, took a deep breath of the cold night air, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. I had done it. I had exposed her for exactly what she was. No more pretending. No more playing dumb. No more Kathy and Fred. It was over. But of course, Kathy wasn't going to let it end quietly. The first call came 5 minutes after I left. I ignored it. Then another. Then a text. "Fred, please. Just talk to me." I tossed my phone in the passenger seat and drove home. By the time I got there, she had sent 7 more messages. All variations of, "We need to talk. I never meant for this to happen. Please come back." I didn't answer. Instead, I poured myself a drink, sat on the couch, and just breathed. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't wondering. I wasn't doubting. I wasn't lying to myself. Kathy was gone. And I was free. She showed up at the apartment around midnight. I knew she would. The second I heard her pounding on the door, I took another sip of whiskey and sighed. "Fred." Her voice was frantic. "Open the door. Please, just let me explain." Explain what? That she had been screwing Jack behind my back? That she had lied to me for months? There was nothing left to say. I didn't move. Didn't answer. I heard her voice break. "Fred, I messed up. I made a mistake. A mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. Burning dinner. Saying something you don't mean in an argument. This was a choice. I stood up, walked to the door, and for a second, just a second, I thought about opening it. Then I heard her phone ring. She sniffled, quiet for a moment, then answered. Jack? I froze. I don't know. He won't talk to me. The pause. I don't know what to do. Another pause. Then, softer. Can I come over? That was it. I stepped back from the door, shaking my head. She was still running to him. Even after everything. I heard her let out a frustrated sigh, then her footsteps fading down the hall. I waited until I was sure she was gone, then locked the door. For good this time, that was the last night she ever set foot in our home. She tried calling again the next day. And the day after that. But I never answered. I didn't need to. She had made her choice. And now? I was finally making mine. I filed for divorce the next morning. Filing for divorce should have felt bigger. More dramatic. But it wasn't. I walked into the lawyer's office, signed a few papers, and that was it. A decade of marriage reduced to a handful of documents. No screaming match. No grand final confrontation. Just a quiet, legal confirmation of what I had already accepted. Kathy was out of my life. Or at least, she would be. Once she finally faced reality, she didn't take it well. I expected anger. Maybe even a little spite. Instead, I got desperation. The texts kept coming. Not every hour, but every day. Fred, please just talk to me. I don't want to lose you. We can fix this. I swear. She even had the nerve to say, I don't love him. It was never about that. Oh, so what was it about, Kathy? Fun? Excitement? Destroying everything we built for nothing? I didn't answer. Because she wasn't texting out of love. She was texting because she was losing. Jack hadn't stepped in to save her. That much was clear. Maybe he got scared. Maybe he realized she wasn't worth the drama. Either way, Kathy was alone. And that terrified her. After 2 weeks of silence, she finally sent something different. I'll sign the divorce papers. Just meet me first. I hesitated. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I wanted it done. So I agreed. One last meeting. One last conversation. Then I was walking away for good. We met at a quiet coffee shop. She looked different. Not bad, just worn down. Like she hadn't been sleeping. She gave me a small, hopeful smile. Hey. I didn't return it. Let's just get this over with. She flinched but nodded, pulling out the papers. I read through everything. It's fair. Good. She hesitated, staring at the table. Fred, I never wanted to hurt you. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Then why did you? She looked up, her eyes glassy. I don't know. I let out a bitter laugh. That's a lie. You do know. She swallowed hard, gripping her coffee cup. I guess. I got lost in it. The attention. The excitement. And by the time I realized how deep I was, I felt like I couldn't stop. I stared at her, feeling nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just emptiness. That's the difference between you and me, Kathy, I said. I felt something was wrong and I chose to stay loyal. You felt something was wrong and you chose to keep lying. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I hate myself for what I did. I believed her. I really did. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I pushed the papers toward her. Sign. She sniffled, wiped her eyes, and picked up the pen. As she signed, I finally felt it. Closure. When she slid the papers back, she whispered, Do you think we could ever? No. She flinched again. Looked down. Nodded. I stood up, grabbing the papers. Goodbye, Kathy. And for the first time in a long time, it actually felt like goodbye. Walking out of that coffee shop should have been the end of it. But people like Kathy? They don't just let go. The next few weeks were quiet. I focused on work, spent time at the gym, kept myself busy. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. Then, one night, she showed up that I was halfway through a bottle of whiskey when I heard the knock. It was late. Too late for visitors. I opened the door, and there she was, Kat. Soaking wet from the rain. Mascara smudged. Looking like a woman who had lost everything. Because she had. I didn't say anything. Just stared at her. She let out a shaky breath. Can I come in? I leaned against the doorframe. Why? She wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know where else to go. I laughed, short, bitter. Not Jack's place. Her face crumpled. It was never about him. I shook my head. You keep saying that like it makes this better. She sniffled. I miss you. I exhaled through my nose, tilting my head. You miss having me. That's not the same thing. Silence. Then her voice broke. I ruined everything, didn't I? I studied her for a long moment. The woman I had spent years loving. The woman who had betrayed me. Finally I answered. Yes, you did. She let out a sob, covering her mouth. But I didn't feel bad for her. This wasn't my pain to carry anymore. I stepped back. Go home, Kathy. She looked up, desperate. Please, Fred. I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. She searched my face, looking for something. A crack, a weakness, a sliver of hope. She didn't find one. Finally, she nodded, wiped her eyes, and turned away. I closed the door, locked it. And this time, I knew she wasn't coming back. That I thought I'd feel something when I shut that door for the last time. Relief. Satisfaction. Regret. But all I felt was done. Kathy was out of my life. No more lies, no more sneaking around, no more pretending. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. And me? I was finally freed. I woke up the next day feeling lighter. For the first time in a long time, I didn't reach over expecting to see her. Didn't wonder where she was or who she was lying to me about. It was just me. I made coffee, pinned the blinds, sat on my balcony and watched the city wake up. And for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't haunted by what had happened. I wasn't replaying old conversations, searching for clues I had missed. I wasn't drowning in what-ifs. I was just here. And that was enough. The divorce finalized a month later. She didn't fight it. Didn't beg anymore. Just signed the papers and disappeared from my life. I heard through the grapevine that she quit her job. That Jack left the company. That whatever fantasy they had built together fell apart the second it was exposed to reality. But I didn't care. Her life wasn't my concern anymore. I started taking new cases. Going out more. Meeting new people. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward, not backward. Betrayal breaks you. It takes everything you thought was solid and shatters it into something unrecognizable. And for a long time, you think you'll never feel normal again. But here's the truth, you will. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in the way you expect. But one day, you wake up and realize it doesn't hurt anymore. That the person who broke you isn't yours to carry anymore. That you survived. And when that day comes, you smile. You take a deep breath. And you move the hell on.